Welcome to ReadFlow Audiobooks, where your mindset evolves, one chapter at a time. Today's journey: 10 daily habits that will change your life. These aren't just habits, they're the foundation of every successful, focused and emotionally strong person you've ever admired. If you've ever felt stuck, distracted or inconsistent, this audiobook is your reset button. Step by step, we'll uncover the 10 habits that rewire your focus, reshape your energy, and rebuild your life from the inside out. Because transformation isn't built overnight, it's built daily. Chapter 1. The power of starting your day with intention. Every day is a blank canvas. Most people wake up and begin painting without thinking, brushing random colors of reaction, distraction and repetition. But the few who live with power, peace and progress, they begin their day with intention. That's the first life-changing habit. Start every day with deliberate clarity. You see, your mornings are not just hours, they're momentum. The first 60 minutes after you wake up hold the potential to define your focus, energy and attitude for the entire day. But the truth is, most people waste that sacred time on autopilot, scrolling through their phones, reacting to messages, rushing into chaos before their minds have even arrived in the present moment. Successful people don't do that. They understand that how you start determines how you continue. The mind, when it first wakes up, is malleable like wet cement. Whatever you pour into it first, it hardens into your mental tone for the day. That's why people who begin with gratitude, calm reflection, reading, journaling, or even 5 minutes of silence feel a different kind of inner steadiness throughout their day. They've planted roots before the storm begins. The habit of conscious beginnings. When you wake up tomorrow, pause. Before you touch your phone, before you scroll, before you let the world in, breathe. Ask yourself 3 simple questions. What is one thing I must move forward? These are not poetic questions. They are anchors. They bring your scattered thoughts into alignment before the day pulls you in 1,000 directions. When successful people talk about having discipline, it's not about rigid schedules or superhuman willpower. It's about direction. They know that without direction, even the most productive day can become meaningless motion. Why mornings are sacred. Every habit begins in the mind, and your mind is clearest at dawn. Before the noise of the world enters, you are closest to your inner self, the quiet voice that tells you what really matters. That's why so many great thinkers, leaders and creators have morning ritual. They use that sacred time to align with their mission. Some write, some pray, some visualize their goals, some train their bodies, but all of them, without exception, choose intention over reaction. Think of your mind as a computer that reboots every night. The moment you wake, the system is ready to load its first program. Will it be one of clarity, gratitude and progress, or one of distraction and stress? You choose that with your first 10 minutes. That's why you must protect your morning like a guardian. If you can win your morning, you can win your day. And if you can win your day, you can win your life. The morning mindset shift. Here's the truth few people understand. Your mornings are not about time, they're about tone. The tone you set in the morning affects how you react to pressure, how you handle people, and how you feel about yourself. A rushed, distracted morning multiplies anxiety. A calm, focused one multiplies clarity. That's why building an intentional morning habit is not about being a morning person. It's about being an intentional person. Version 1 wakes up, grabs the phone, scrolls through bad news, rushes through breakfast, and heads out the door tense and reactive. Version 2 wakes up, sits in silence for 5 minutes, takes a few deep breaths, writes down 3 things you're grateful for, and sets one powerful goal for the day. Both versions live the same 24 hours, but they experience 2 different worlds. One moves through noise, the other moves with clarity, creating a ritual that fits you. Let's be honest, not everyone has time for a 2-hour morning routine with meditation, journaling, cold showers and goal lists, and that's okay. This habit isn't about copying someone else's system. It's about creating your own ritual that fits your life. Your goal is to craft a morning that grounds you. If that's 5 minutes of stillness before sunrise, perfect. If that's listening to something inspiring while making coffee, perfect. If that's walking outside to feel the air and remember you're alive, perfect. The key is consistency. Your mind doesn't need extravagance. It needs repetition. Every morning you start with focus. You build a muscle of control. Every time you skip it, you feed the muscle of chaos. You are training your nervous system for calm, your emotions for balance, and your mind for clarity. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. The science behind morning focus. Neurologically, your early morning brain operates with elevated alpha wave activity, the same pattern associated with creativity, learning and calm awareness. This means the thoughts you entertain in that window go deep. They shape your day's mental architecture. That's why starting your day with gratitude or journaling is powerful. It programs your subconscious. It tells your brain, this is what matters. This is where we're going. And the brain listens. It aligns your attention, filters opportunities, and strengthens your decision-making based on that early input. In contrast, starting with stress, reading emails, or doom scrolling teaches your brain to seek threats. You'll subconsciously look for negativity all day. You'll feel reactive, scattered and tense without even knowing why. So this isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. The first habit of all life change is to take ownership of your morning mind. The power of the first hour. Try this. For the next 7 days, make the first hour of your morning a no-reaction zone. No phone, no social media, no random news. Instead, fill that space with purpose. Less than an hour, yet it can completely reset the way you live. Because when you begin your day intentionally, you teach your brain that you are in control. You are not a reactor to life. You are the designer of. Why most people fail to keep this habit. Here's the truth. Most people don't stick to morning rituals because they treat them like a performance, not a practice. They think it has to be perfect, that if they miss one day they've failed. But that's wrong. Success is not built on perfection. It's built on returning. Every time you return to your morning intention, even after missing a day, you strengthen your identity as someone who lives deliberately. That's the quiet power of discipline. Discipline is not about force. It's about remembering who you want to be. And every morning gives you a chance to remember. Your first habit challenge. So for today, just one commitment. Start your day with intention. Not a to-do list. Not noise. Not distraction. But calm, deliberate thought. Even 5 minutes of focus can shift your state, your choices, and your confidence. You can't control every event in your day, but you can control how you begin it. And that single habit, over time, creates compound transformation. They shape your destiny. Chapter 2. The Momentum Habit. Building 1% growth that lasts for life. Every day, you have 2 options. Repeat what you've always done, or become just a little bit better. 1%. That's all it takes. But the difference between those 2 paths, repetition and evolution, is the difference between existing and expanding. It's easy to dream big, to plan massive change, to talk about transformation, but it's not the big leaps that change your life. It's the small, daily, invisible movements that stack over time. The 1% improvements, the minor choices no one sees, the micro moments when you could quit but decide to keep going just a little longer. That's the habit of momentum, the discipline of staying in motion, every day, no matter how small the step. Even the smallest sense of improvement releases dopamine, the motivation molecule. This isn't just a chemical rush of pleasure. It's a signal to your mind that you are moving towards something meaningful. That's why successful people design their days to generate progress loops, small victories that keep the mind and spirit hungry. They don't wait for motivation to appear. They create it through movement. When you take one small action, even something simple like finishing a morning task or writing a single page, your brain rewards you. That little spark of satisfaction becomes fuel for the next step. Momentum, then, isn't magic. It's mechanic. It's not about pushing harder. It's about building a rhythm of progress that keeps you emotionally engaged and mentally sharp. That's the math of momentum. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year of small, steady effort. Think of your growth like compound interest. Each small improvement builds on the one before it. The earlier you start, the more powerful the compounding becomes. That's why the best in every field, athletes, creators, leaders, obsess over daily habits, not massive goals, because they understand consistency compounds, intensity burns out. The system versus the streak. Successful people don't rely on motivation, they rely on systems. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls like waves. Systems are structural. They hold steady even when your feelings don't. You might not always feel like exercising, writing, studying, or building your business, but if your environment, schedule and identity support the habit, you'll still do it. That's why momentum is not about effort. It's about design. Ask yourself, are you trying to summon motivation every day instead of automating discipline? The people who change their lives don't fight themselves daily. They remove friction. They make success the default. If your gym shoes are ready by the door, it's easier to train. If your journal is on your desk, you'll write. If your phone is out of reach, you'll think clearly. Momentum grows when friction disappears. Identity, the hidden engine of momentum. Here's the part most people miss. The deepest layer of growth isn't what you do, it's who you believe you are. You can't sustain habits that don't align with your identity. If you still see yourself as someone who procrastinates, no system will save you. But if you begin to see yourself as someone disciplined, focused and evolving, your behavior follows naturally. That's why successful people don't just set goals, they build identity. They don't say, I'm trying to read more. They say, I'm a learner. They don't say, I'm trying to get fit. They say, I'm an athlete. They don't say, I'm trying to build discipline. They say, I'm the kind of person who does what I say I'll do. Your habits follow your self-image, and every 1% improvement reinforces that new identity. That's why journaling, reflection, and gratitude are vital. They reconnect your actions to your purpose. Without that emotional fuel, habits turn robotic, and eventually you'll quit. Every day, take a moment to remember why you're doing this. What kind of life are you building? Who are you becoming through these small steps? What version of you are you fighting for? When you keep your why close, your how becomes unstoppable. They only ask, can I do this today? You can handle anything for a day. You can wake up early today. You can focus for an hour. You can exercise for 20 minutes. When you focus only on the next small win, you remove the mental weight of forever. And over time, those micro commitments turn into monumental change. That's how marathon runners finish 26 miles, one step at a time. That's how successful people build momentum, one disciplined day at a time. Stacking habits for unstoppable flow. To create long-term 1% growth, link your habits together. Habit stacking is how you turn isolated actions into automatic flow. For example, after I pour my coffee, I write my goals. After I eat lunch, I take a 10-minute walk. Each existing habit becomes a cue for the next one. That's how you create chains of momentum. Once that flow is set, your days begin to feel effortless. You're not fighting to do what's right. It's simply your rhythm. Self-trust is the foundation of success. Without it, you'll second-guess every decision and sabotage every plan. But when you build the habit of following through, even on small things, your identity begins to shift. You start thinking like someone who gets things done. You start acting with certainty, not hesitation. And slowly, your external reality begins to match your internal standard. That's the magic of daily discipline. It rewires your belief system. Days when everything feels heavy, progress feels invisible, and life tests your patience. Those are the days momentum matters most. Because the people who grow 1% every day aren't the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who keep moving while struggling. They take smaller steps, slower steps, but they don't stop. Remember this: the act of staying in motion, even imperfectly, keeps your identity alive. It's not about speed, it's about direction. When you move forward on your worst days, you prove to your mind that your commitment is real, and that belief, that self-evidence of resilience, becomes your unstoppable advantage. You'll wake up not needing to convince yourself anymore, because the habit has become part of who you are. You won't need motivation because your environment, your identity, and your rhythm all point in the same direction forward. That's the moment growth becomes natural, when your actions, beliefs, and emotions align. That's not just progress, that's freedom. Each day, make it just a little bit better. Read one extra page, do one extra push-up, spend one extra minute reflecting, speak one kind word more than yesterday. That's all it takes. Tiny adjustments that seem meaningless in the moment, but over time, they shift everything. Because small steps done daily don't just change your results, they change who you are. Chapter 3. The Midweek Discipline. How successful people stay focused when motivation fades. It's Wednesday. The rush of Monday is gone, and the excitement of a new week has faded. You're not at the finish line yet, and the weekend still feels far away. This is the gray zone, where average minds slow down but extraordinary ones lock in. It's in these middle days that most people lose their edge. The tasks feel repetitive, the spark of urgency fades, and distraction sneaks in quietly, dressed as just 5 minutes of scrolling, resting, or delaying. But here's what separates the successful from the stagnant. They understand that discipline is not a feeling, it's a decision. While the rest of the world waits for energy to return, they manufacture focus. They don't rely on motivation, they rely on momentum. And it's here, in the middle of the week, when everyone else fades, that true discipline is built. The discipline shift. Motivation may get you started, but it's discipline that gets you finished. Successful people know this truth deeply. They treat their focus like a sacred resource, not something to waste on noise or meaningless motion. By midweek they enter a different mental zone, calm, structured, and deliberate. Their question isn't what do I feel like doing today, it's what deserves my energy today. This is the discipline shift, the moment you stop living emotionally and start living intentionally. They understand that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about freedom. The freedom that comes when your actions serve your future instead of your impulses. It's that invisible wall between excitement and exhaustion, between vision and execution. Most people start the week full of goals. By Wednesday, life has hit back deadlines, fatigue, distraction, and that subtle whisper of self-doubt that says, maybe I'll pick it up next week. But successful people see the wall differently. To them, it's not an obstacle, it's a test. They know that how you perform when the spark fades defines the kind of person you're becoming. Anyone can show up when it's easy. Champions show up when it's not. So they use Wednesday, that middle ground, as their personal proving ground. It's not a slump, it's where they separate themselves from the crowd. The power of structure. If you look closely at highly disciplined people, you'll notice something powerful. Their days are structured, not crowded. They don't chase 1,000 priorities. They protect their focus like it's oxygen. By midweek, their systems take over. They've designed their environment so they don't need to think, only execute. They've built routines that conserve mental energy. Here's how successful people keep their focus when the week starts to blur. Morning routines, exercise schedules, reflection time, these aren't optional. They're anchors that keep their days grounded. They batch their work. Creative tasks early in the week, meetings midweek, reflection on Friday. They know when they're sharpest, and they guard those hours. They minimize decisions, clothing, meals, workflows, simplified, because every unnecessary choice drains the focus needed for what truly matters. This is the secret. Structure creates freedom. When your day has rhythm, your mind has clarity. The discipline of energy management. Discipline isn't just about time management, it's about energy management. Successful people understand that your energy is not infinite. It's a resource that needs protection and renewal. That's why they structure their midweeks to balance output with restoration. They don't grind mindlessly, they manage intensity. You can't operate at 100% all week without crashing. So instead they work in focused waves. Deep work, then active recovery. For example, 90 minutes of pure concentration, 10 minutes of walking, or reflection. Focus on one priority task in the morning, lighter meetings after lunch, short breaks with movement or silence instead of mindless scrolling. This rhythm keeps the brain sharp. It turns fatigue into flow. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter, with awareness. Because no matter how productive or focused you are, the middle of the week will always bring tests, difficult conversations, unexpected problems, self-doubt or boredom. Successful people don't react emotionally to every challenge. They pause, process, and respond with clarity. They understand that emotions are data, not directions. They feel them but they don't obey them. That's emotional discipline, the ability to hold your center while the noise around you shifts. Every time you respond calmly when others react impulsively, you build inner power, and that power compounds just like habits do. It's a moment designed not to escape, but to recalibrate. In that space, they ask themselves, it realigns your mind with your mission, turning noise into clarity again. So if you ever feel scattered by Wednesday, pause, don't quit. Don't push blindly. Reset, refocus, then restart with purpose. The midweek recommitment. Here's what the best do that most people don't. They recommit midweek. They don't wait for next Monday to reset their focus. They use the middle of the week as a checkpoint, a moment to measure alignment between what they said they'd do and what they're actually doing. It's a simple question. Am I still walking toward my vision, or have I drifted? If they've drifted, they don't beat themselves up. They correct course immediately. That's discipline, self-awareness in motion. Recommitment is a form of mastery. It means you don't need perfect weeks, just intentional ones. You've been disciplined for days. Your mind is tired. Your phone is tempting. Your willpower is low. This is where successful people make their stand. They treat focus as a scarce asset. They know that if they lose it, their results suffer exponentially. So they engineer their environment to protect it. Data notifications silenced. Workspaces cleared of clutter. Deep work blocks scheduled, non-negotiable. Social media limited to intentional window. They also know why they're protecting it. Because focus isn't just about getting things done. It's about building a life that aligns with your purpose. Distraction doesn't just waste time, it steals meaning. When you choose focus, you reclaim your life. Discipline as identity. At this stage of the week, successful people aren't fighting themselves anymore. Their habits have fused with their identity. They don't have to force focus. They've become the kind of person who finishes what they start. That's the real reward of discipline, not just external results, but internal pride. A quiet strength that says, I can trust myself to follow through. That trust is rare. It's built one disciplined choice at a time, and by midweek, those choices start to define your character. Discipline turns into integrity. Integrity turns into confidence. Confidence turns into power. Here are 3 simple examples. Data midweek review. Spend 10 minutes every Wednesday, evaluating your week. What's working? What needs adjusting? The digital fast. One evening, midweek. No screens after 7 p.m. Reclaim your focus and rest. The energy walk. 15 minutes of reflection outdoors, no distractions. Just breathing and clarity. Do it consistently for the next 3 weeks. You'll start to feel a rhythm. Your own center of calm control in the chaos of midweek noise. And that's how successful people stay sharp when others fade. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. And midweek is where persistence is forged. Because anyone can start strong, but only the disciplined finish stronger. Chapter 4. Consistency. Protecting your momentum through the second half of the week. Thursday, Friday. The week's pulse begins to change. The energy shifts. You've already spent days weighing forward, making choices, resisting distractions, staying disciplined. Now, fatigue begins to whisper. Comfort tempts you to ease off. The weekend glows faintly on the horizon, promising rest and reward. This is the moment when consistency is tested, because success isn't built in the first half of the week, it's sealed in the second half. When most people start to slow down, the few who stay consistent create a gap that's almost impossible to close. And that gap, that's the difference between progress and plateau. The invisible slide. Momentum is fragile. It doesn't disappear all at once. It fades quietly. It begins with one skipped task, one delayed message, one half-hearted effort, and before you notice, the sharp focus that powered your week turns dull. Successful people know this. That's why they protect momentum like it's sacred. They understand that once you lose rhythm, restarting requires 10 times more effort. So they build systems not just to start strong, but to stay steady. Their mindset: consistency is energy, not effort. Here's a truth that most people miss. Consistency is energy. Here's a truth that most people miss. Consistency isn't about grinding harder. It's about managing energy better. Successful people don't burn out chasing progress. They pace themselves like marathoners, not sprinters. They understand that energy must be renewed, not forced. So as the week moves toward its end, they focus less on pushing and more on balancing output with restoration. They know when to dial up intensity and when to pull back slightly to refuel. It's a rhythm, a breathing pattern for productivity. Better. Early week. Expansion. Setting direction. Launching into big tasks. Midweek. Execution. Disciplined focus and steady output. Late week. Consistency. Protecting gains. Reviewing performance and refining habits. This is how momentum survives fatigue. Consistency isn't a sprint to Friday, it's a glide built on rhythm, reflection, and renewal. Think of an athlete in the final laps of a race. The body aches, lungs burn, the temptation to slow down creeps in. But champions don't coast. They lean in. If you end weak, disorganized, distracted, mentally checked out, you carry that energy into Monday. But if you end strong, intentional, grounded, proud of your week, you step into the next with power. That's why successful people treat Thursday and Friday as launch pads, not cooldowns. They finish the week with purpose because they know momentum carried forward compounds. Rituals that protect momentum. By the time Thursday arrives, successful people activate their momentum rituals. These are small, powerful systems designed to keep progress flowing even as energy dips. Here are some of their most effective ones. The review window. Every Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, they spend time reviewing the week, not emotionally, but strategically. What moved forward? What stalled? What can be improved? This process transforms reflection into fuel. Micro wins. They intentionally close out small unfinished tasks to clear mental space. Checking off lingering items gives a sense of closure and satisfaction that locks in motivation. The gratitude reset. Before the week ends, they take a few minutes to write or think about 3 things they're grateful for. This isn't fluff, it's mental renewal. Gratitude refocuses the mind from pressure to progress. The consistency cycle. Momentum thrives when you respect the cycle of effort and recovery. Successful people live by a rhythm of 3 phases. Engage. Focus fully on the task at hand. Evaluate. Step back briefly to assess and adjust. Evolve. Apply insights. Then move forward stronger. This rhythm keeps progress sustainable. It prevents burnout while sharpening results. You don't have to work harder than everyone else. You just have to work more rhythmically, in tune with your energy, not against it. This is how consistency transforms from a chore into a lifestyle. Protecting your mental bandwidth. By late week, your mind is crowded. Notifications, tasks, meetings, unfinished ideas. Mental clutter kills consistency faster than fatigue. Successful people protect their mental bandwidth ruthlessly. They declutter their digital and mental space every Thursday or Friday, clearing their inbox, sorting notes or ideas. This isn't busy work, it's mental hygiene. It resets focus, so when the new week arrives they start light, not loaded. Because consistency is not just about what you do, it's about what you remove. Emotional consistency. Staying grounded. It's easy to stay disciplined when everything goes smoothly. The real test of consistency comes when life throws disruption. Successful people maintain emotional consistency, a calm, steady internal state even when the external world shifts. They don't spiral over setbacks. They don't celebrate early wins so much that they lose focus. They stay even, emotionally balanced and anchored in their mission. This emotional steadiness gives them an edge, because when others burn energy reacting, they conserve energy responding, and over time, that difference in emotional control builds momentum that feels unstoppable. The power of predictable progress. One of the most underrated habits of high performers is predictability. They don't chase random peaks of productivity. They build systems of predictable progress. They track their habits, measure small metrics, and focus on consistency over intensity. Think about it. Doing something meaningful once a month doesn't change your life. Doing something meaningful every day, even imperfectly, rewires your identity. Predictable progress might not look exciting in the moment, but it compounds silently, turning ordinary weeks into extraordinary years. Successful people use Fridays to set up their next success, not to escape the week. They do 3 simple things. This small ritual keeps momentum alive while allowing genuine rest, because the weekend isn't for losing focus, it's for restoring the energy that keeps focus alive. They rest with purpose, not to escape their goals, but to return stronger for them. The weekend myth. There's a myth that successful people never rest. That's wrong. The most consistent people in the world rest deliberately. They know recovery isn't laziness, it's maintenance. They treat rest like a strategy, not an afterthought. When they stop working, they truly stop. No guilt, no mental tabs open, because deep rest is what allows deep work to exist again. So while the average person uses the weekend to run from their exhaustion, the disciplined person uses it to rebuild their strength. That's how they keep showing up, week after week, month after month. They don't wake up every day debating whether to follow through. They simply are the kind of person who follows through. Consistency for them is not a task, it's who they are. And when your identity aligns with your actions, everything becomes smooth. You no longer chase discipline, you embody it. You no longer push for motivation, you live by purpose. That's the final evolution of momentum. It becomes automatic, something that helps you close the week strong and start the next with power. Here's a simple framework. Thursday review, 10 minutes. Write down 3 wins, 3 lessons, and 1 thing you'll do differently next week. Friday focus reset, 15 minutes. Organize your workspace, close open loops, and plan Monday's top priority. Weekend recharge plan. Choose one activity that genuinely replenishes you, not mindless escape, but meaningful rest. Do this rhythmically, protect it, honor it. Soon your consistency will stop depending on motivation. It will live inside your identity. Consistency is the quiet engine behind every transformation. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's the reason some people build empires while others build excuses. When the week winds down and others slow, that's your moment to rise. Calm, steady, unstoppable. Because the real mark of success isn't how fast you start, it's how unshakably you continue. Chapter 5. The Power of Recovery. Rest, renewal and recharging without losing focus. Let's begin with a truth most people never realize until they burn out. Rest is not the opposite of work. It's part of the work. The average person treats recovery like an afterthought, something you do once exhaustion forces it. But the most successful people in the world, they plan recovery with the same precision they plan performance. They understand that rest is not downtime. It's power storage. And in a world that glorifies hustle and constant motion, the ability to recover deeply is a competitive advantage. Because success isn't about who can go the longest without breaking, it's about who can recover the fastest and come back sharper. The burnout myth. We live in a culture that confuses exhaustion with achievement. People brag about how little they sleep, how busy their calendars look, how long their to-do lists stretch. But here's the hidden cost. When you run on empty long enough, your clarity fades, creativity drops, and emotional control fractures. You start reacting instead of responding. You start pushing harder yet producing less. You lose the very focus that made you effective. Burnout doesn't happen because you work too much. It happens because you recover too little. And successful people, those who play the long game, know this. They don't aim to burn bright for a season. They aim to burn steady for a lifetime. Rest with purpose. There's a difference between rest and escape. Most people don't rest. They run. They scroll endlessly, binge distractions, and call it taking a break. But that kind of rest doesn't renew, it numbs. Successful people, on the other hand, rest with purpose. Their recovery is active, intentional, designed to restore the systems that sustain their success: body, mind, and spirit. When they rest, they do it in a way that makes them more alive, more grounded, more creative, because for them recovery isn't laziness, it's strategy. Physical recovery. This is the foundation. Without physical restoration, everything else collapses. It's not just about sleep, though sleep is sacred. It's also about movement that restores rather than drains. They stretch, they walk, they breathe deeply, they let the body exhale the stress it's been holding. For them, physical recovery isn't optional. It's maintenance for the machine that carries the mission. 2. Mental recovery. Focus drains energy. Constant decision-making taxes the mind. So successful people unplug deliberately. They create mental space by scheduling moments of silence, reading something nourishing, or simply doing one thing with complete presence. No multitasking, no noise. They understand that clarity doesn't appear through more thinking. It appears through stillness. 3. Emotional recovery. This is what most people ignore. You can be physically rested and mentally sharp, yet still emotionally drained. They reflect, journal, express gratitude, or spend time with people who uplift rather than deplete. They know emotions are fuel. If you don't renew them, your drive turns to frustration. 4. Spiritual recovery. This isn't necessarily religious. It's about reconnecting to purpose. Successful people recharge by realigning with why they do what they do. Whether it's meditation, prayer, nature, or solitude, they take time to remember the bigger picture, the mission beyond metrics. Because when your purpose feels alive, energy flows naturally. The rest productivity paradox. The harder you rest, the better you perform. It sounds backward, but it's true. Science confirms that the brain functions in cycles of focus and recovery. The most productive people don't work non-stop. They oscillate between intensity and restoration. Think of it like waves. Focus rises, crests, and falls. If you ignore the fall, if you fight the need to recover, you flatten the wave, killing its power. But if you ride the rhythm, you can stay sharp indefinitely. Successful people work with their biology, not against it. They rest not because they're tired, but because they're strategic. They know that consistent excellence requires regular renewal. The weekend as a weapon. While most people see weekends as escape, successful people see them as leverage. They use that time not to disconnect from life, but to reconnect with it. The weekend becomes a reset ritual, a time to sharpen, not dull, the edge. Here's how they do it. They physical reset, prioritize rest, real rest, sleep without alarms, move gently, eat mindfully. Mental reset, disconnect from screens and dopamine noise, give the mind a chance to breathe in stillness. Emotional reset, spend time with the people who bring peace, not drama, revisit gratitude, not grievances. Spiritual reset, reflect on the week, what aligned, what drifted, what matters most next. By Sunday night they don't feel anxious about Monday, they feel ready, because their weekends refuel the engine instead of draining it. At first it feels uncomfortable. The silence is loud. The stillness feels foreign. But soon they find something they didn't know they'd lost: the ability to hear their own mind. Unplugging isn't about isolation. It's about reconnection. Reconnection to your thought. Reconnection to your energy. Reconnection to your deeper self. Because you can't lead your life effectively if you're constantly reacting to someone else's noise. They don't wait for burnout to recover. They rest within the workday. Small, deliberate pauses that prevent fatigue before it starts. It could be these small resets act like system refreshes. They keep the nervous system calm, the focus sharp, and the energy steady. They're reminders that rest isn't always a break from progress. Sometimes it's what keeps progress alive. The rest discipline. It takes discipline to rest well. Anyone can keep working until exhaustion. It takes awareness to stop while you still have strength. Resting strategically is a skill, one that separates those who merely push from those who sustain greatness. The disciplined performer understands that recovery is not indulgence, it's responsibility, because you can't pour from an empty mind, you can't lead from a drained spirit. If your energy collapses, everything you've built starts to wobble. So they schedule rest like they schedule meetings. They plan to recover, not just hope to, and when they rest, they commit fully. No guilt, no half-working, no divided attention. Successful people treat that energy like currency. They know where it's going, and they invest it wisely. They protect their attention from leaks, gossip, negativity, distractions, shallow busyness, because they understand you can't control time, but you can control what state you bring to it. They design their routines to renew energy daily, through good sleep, nourishing food, mindful movement, gratitude and intentional break. This creates an upward spiral. Energy fuels focus. Focus creates progress. Progress builds fulfillment, which fuels more energy. To master recovery, without losing focus, design a simple renewal system you can use weekly. Here's a model used by many top performers. Do one action that signals closure, like dimming lights, stretching or journaling. Midweek recharge, 20 minutes. Reaffirm your focus. What still truly matters this week. Weekend reset, 1 hour. Review your week wins, lessons, next steps. Disconnect from devices for half a day. Plan one joyful, energizing activity. Something that fills your heart, not your calendar. The goal is not to do nothing. It's to do what renews you most. Rest without regression. One of the greatest fears driven people have is that if they slow down, they'll lose their edge. But that's only true if you confuse rest with complacency. Rest done right doesn't dull your edge. It sharpens it. It gives your mind space to connect ideas, your body time to rebuild, and your spirit a moment to breathe. When you return, you're not just recharged, you're revitalized. You move with more clarity, more creativity, more control. Successful people don't fall behind by resting. They fall behind when they don't. When you give yourself permission to recover, you're saying, my energy matters, my well-being matters, my mission deserves my best, not my leftovers. That's what separates the achievers from the fulfilled. Because true success is not just reaching your goals, it's sustaining the strength to keep growing long after others fade. What if rest became something you trained for just as much as work? What if recovery wasn't a reward for exhaustion, but a ritual for excellence? Because the truth is simple. You don't lose progress when you rest. You lose it when you refuse to. Chapter 6. Emotional Resilience. How the strong stay calm when the world gets loud. There will always be storms. You can't control the weather of life, the setbacks, rejections, instant detours, but you can control how you sail through them. This is what separates the fragile from the unbreakable. Not the absence of hardship, but the presence of resilience. Success isn't built in moments of ease. It's forged in moments of pressure. The people who rise, who keep building, who continue showing up even when it hurts, they aren't stronger by nature. They're stronger by practice, because emotional resilience is not a personality trait. It's a discipline, one that successful people train daily. The calm inside the chaos. Imagine standing in the center of a hurricane, everything spinning around you, debris flying, wind roaring. Now imagine there's a calm, still space at the eye of that storm. That's emotional resilience. It's not pretending chaos doesn't exist. It's being so grounded inside yourself that the world's noise can't shake your center. Successful people have that calm, not because life is easier for them, but because they've built the internal stability to handle it. While others panic, they pause. While others react, they respond. While others crumble, they adapt. They've learnt that emotional control is power, and without it, all other skills collapse. That's why successful people don't rely on motivation, they rely on stability. They've trained themselves to keep moving, even when they don't feel like it. They've learned to show up, even when the emotions scream otherwise, because they understand that progress isn't about how you feel. It's about what you do despite how you feel. Resilience is emotional maturity in action. It's choosing direction over distraction, clarity over chaos, strength over reaction. The power of the pause. There's a space, a tiny space, between what happens to you and how you respond. And in that space lies all your power. Most people skip it. They react instantly to words, emotions, frustrations. They let anger, fear, or pride take the wheel. But emotionally strong people guard that space. They pause, they breathe, they give themselves a moment to process before choosing their next move. That single second of awareness separates regret from growth. Resilient people master the art of pausing, not because they're slow, but because they're wise. They know reaction is cheap, response is expensive. Every time you pause before reacting, you reclaim your power. Training emotional endurance. Emotional endurance isn't built by avoiding pressure. It's built by enduring it consciously. Think of it like physical training. You don't grow stronger by lifting what's comfortable. You grow by lifting what challenges you. Not enough to break, but enough to push your limits. The same applies to your emotions. When something frustrates you, irritates you, tests your patience, that's your gym. Each moment of discomfort is every time you stay calm instead of snapping, patient instead of panicking, grounded instead of running, you grow stronger inside. Successful people see emotional challenges, not as obstacles, but as training sessions for their future self. The 3 layers of mental toughness. Resilience isn't one thing. It's a system of 3 inner strengths working together. 1. Clarity under pressure. When most people panic, resilient people zoom out. They look at problems from 30. Instead of drowning in emotion, they ask, what is this situation really trying to teach me? What's the next right move? Not the perfect one. What can I control right now? This clarity cuts through emotional fog. It's what allows them to move forward when everyone else freezes. 2. Emotional regulation. Resilient people feel everything. They just don't let feelings drive. They experience fear, anger, and doubt like anyone else, but they filter them through awareness before acting. This is emotional intelligence in motion. It's not suppression, it's mastery. They don't deny emotions, they digest them. They let the energy move through, without letting it dictate their decisions. 3. Meaning over misery. Pain without purpose destroys. Pain with purpose transforms. The mindset shift that changes everything. Emotionally strong people operate from a simple but life-changing belief. I may not control what happens, but I always control what I become through it. That belief turns chaos into classroom. Every setback becomes data. Every rejection becomes redirection. Every failure becomes feedback. When you adopt that mindset, nothing is truly wasted. Even the pain starts working for you. That's what makes resilient people unstoppable. They don't wait for life to be easy. They just keep growing stronger through every challenge. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, faced war, betrayal, loss, yet he wrote words that still guide us today. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's emotional resilience distilled into one truth. Control the controllable. Release the rest. Modern high performers live by the same principle. They don't waste energy fighting what they can't change. They invest it into what they can. When plans fall apart, they adapt. When people disappoint them, they adjust. When uncertainty strikes, they lean on discipline, not emotion. That's not detachment. That's wisdom. How successful people handle emotional triggers. Everyone has emotional triggers, moments where anger, fear, or insecurity rise. The difference is how you handle them. Here's how resilient people deal with emotional spikes. Awareness before action. They notice the emotion early, before it controls them. I'm feeling angry. I'm getting defensive. Naming it neutralizes it. Breath before response. They breathe deep. Oxygen resets the body's stress system. It gives the brain time to think clearly again. Perspective before reaction. They zoom out. Will this matter in a week, a month, a year? Most of the time it won't. At purpose, over ego. They ask, What response aligns with who I want to be, not what response satisfies me right now. This is how they turn triggers into training. Every situation becomes a test, a chance to choose growth over reaction. The key isn't to never break, it's to recover quickly. Resilient people have systems for emotional recovery. Here's what that looks like in practice. Reflection. After stressful situations, they take time to journal or process the lesson instead of burying the emotion. Grounding habits. They use rituals like walking, meditation, or deep breathing to calm their nervous system. Connection. They talk to trusted mentors or friends, not to complain but to gain perspective. Recalibration. They end tough days by reaffirming their values, what truly matters beyond the moment's pain. This is how they stay grounded in chaos. They recover deliberately, not accidentally. The power of composure. In moments of crisis, people look to the calmest person in the room. That calm is leadership. Resilient people radiate that composure. They've trained themselves to stay centered when others lose balance. Because composure is contagious, it creates trust, stability, and direction. The best leaders aren't loud or emotional. They're steady. Their calm presence anchors everyone around them. And that steadiness starts with emotional mastery, the ability to feel deeply but act wise, transforming pain into power. Every emotionally resilient person has a story, a scar that became strength. They've faced things that could have broken them, but instead, those moments became the foundation of their growth. The truth is, pain either hardens you or humbles you. It can make you bitter or it can make you better. Resilient people choose better. They transmute pain into wisdom, loss into gratitude, struggle into discipline. They understand that life's hardest moments often carry the greatest lessons. If you're willing to stay open. How to build emotional strength daily. Resilience is built one decision at a time. Here's how to start training it every day. Start small. Delay one impulse today. A reaction, a distraction, a complaint. Each moment of control strengthens your self-mastery. Embrace discomfort. Choose something slightly hard daily. Cold showers, workouts, challenging conversations. It teaches your nervous system that discomfort is safe. Reflect daily. Before bed, ask, where did I stay calm today? Where did I react? Awareness builds mastery. Protect your energy. Limit exposure to toxic inputs. Negative people, doom scrolling, pointless arguments. Gratitude under pressure. When stress hits, list 3 things you're still grateful for. Gratitude dissolves emotional chaos. Bit by bit, this practice makes you unshakable. The gift of resilience. Here's the paradox. The more you grow emotionally, the less the world can throw you off balance. You stop fearing challenges because you know you can handle them. You stop seeking control because you've mastered your response. You stop fighting every storm because you've learned to stand still within it. And in that stillness you find power, real power, quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything, because it already is. It means you feel fully, but you stay steady anyway. It's not about building walls, it's about building strength. So the next time life pushes you, don't ask why me, ask what is this teaching me? Because every storm is shaping the version of you that can't be broken. And that is how successful people stay calm, clear and powerful when the world gets loud. Chapter 7. The Fire Within. Sustaining motivation and purpose when the spark fades. Motivation is a beautiful illusion. It feels like fire, bright, powerful, unstoppable. But like any flame, it flickers. It burns high when conditions are perfect and fades when the air gets thin. That's why most people start strong and fade fast. They rely on a spark that was never meant to last forever. But the most successful people you know, the ones who stay consistent, inspired and driven month after month, they don't depend on motivation. They've learned how to manufacture energy from something far deeper: purpose. Purpose is not a spark, it's a furnace. It doesn't need perfect conditions to burn, it creates its own fire. When the spark fades, every journey begins with excitement. A new goal, a new chapter, a new opportunity. Your energy feels unstoppable. But soon enough, the honeymoon ends. The mornings get heavier. The work feels repetitive. Progress slows down. The results you expected take longer than you hoped. This is where 95% of people fade. They mistake the feeling of motivation for the foundation of discipline, and when that feeling goes, so does their momentum. But the top 5%, the resilient, purpose-driven achievers, they know the truth. You don't stay consistent because you feel motivated. You stay consistent because you made a decision. They don't chase emotions, they create systems. They don't rely on inspiration, they rely on identity. When motivation fades, identity takes over. Identity, the root of unbreakable drive. Motivation asks, do I feel like it? Identity says, this is who I am. That single shift changes everything. A motivated person works out when they feel inspired. A disciplined person works out because they are someone who trains. A motivated person writes when they have energy. A purposeful person writes because it's what they do. Successful people don't depend on moods. They depend on meaning. They've built their daily actions around who they want to be, not how they feel. So when motivation fades, they keep going, because their habits are tied to identity, not emotion. When fatigue sets in, purpose reminds you why you started. Purpose is the compass that keeps you moving when the map disappears. Without purpose, work becomes punishment. With purpose, work becomes privilege. Successful people keep their purpose close, not as an abstract dream, but as a living reminder. They reconnect with it daily. They visualize it, write it down, talk about it, breathe it. They know that if you forget your why, you'll lose your way. So they guard it, they feed it, they turn it into a ritual. It could be through journaling. Today I'm working toward freedom for my family. Today I'm building the version of me I promised myself I'd become. Today I'm honoring my potential. It could be through visualization, seeing the result, feeling the pride, hearing the voice that says, you did it. Or it could simply be silence, sitting still for a moment, breathing deeply, and remembering you get to do this. Because purpose isn't something you find once. It's something you choose daily. And that daily choice keeps the fire alive long after motivation burns out. Think of discipline as emotional insurance. It protects your progress from mood swings. Successful people have mastered this. They don't negotiate with their feelings. They've made discipline automatic, like brushing their teeth or locking the door. They don't ask, do I feel like it? They ask, what's my next move? Their emotions are passengers. Their purpose is the driver. And because of that, they build momentum, one steady day at a time. The midweek slump and the purpose reset. You know that feeling around Wednesday or Thursday, when energy drops, the week feels long, and motivation starts to fade. That's the moment that defines your growth. Average people take their foot off the gas. Successful people reset their fire. They don't wait for inspiration to come back. They create it. Here's how they do it. Micro wins. They set small, achievable goals for the next 24 hours to rebuild momentum. They remind themselves, you're not tired. You're just disconnected. That's the secret. You don't lose motivation, you lose connection to your purpose. Reconnection revives energy. The power of emotional anchors. Successful people have what I call emotional anchors, reminders that pull them back to their deeper why. These could be a playlist that reignites emotion, a mantra they repeat when times get hard. They use these anchors to reignite purpose on demand. When they hit a wall, they don't ask, why is this happening to me? They ask, how can I use this to grow stronger? Because growth isn't about staying excited. It's about staying aligned. Successful people understand this deeply. It's not about having more hours. It's about having more usable energy. They guard their energy like a sacred resource. They say no more often than yes. They take breaks before burnout hits. They move their bodies, stay hydrated, sleep well, and eliminate noise. They know energy is the currency of progress. Without it, even the best goals die. With it, even the hardest paths feel doable. So they manage their energy rhythms throughout the week. Early week, creation and deep work. Midweek, review and adjustment. End of week, reflection and recovery. They structure their life not around tasks, but around renewal. Because a well-rested mind is a motivated mind. A passion versus purpose. Passion is emotional. It feels good. Purpose is foundational. It endures. You can feel passionate about many things, but purpose is what keeps you anchored through pain. Successful people use passion as fuel, but purpose as direction. When the excitement fades, purpose keeps the compass steady. Passion asks, what do I love doing? Purpose asks, what am I willing to suffer for? That's the difference between those who quit and those who keep going. A passion, the momentum equation. Motivation, action, results. Motivation. Successful people know the secret. You don't need motivation to take action. You need action to create motivation. The act of doing creates emotional fuel. The more you move, the more inspired you feel. That's how they build unstoppable momentum. They focus on motion before emotion. Purpose turns work into worship. The truly great ones, the ones who stay inspired for decades, they see their daily work as sacred. Every task, no matter how small, becomes an act of alignment. They treat effort as expression. They pour their energy into excellence, not because someone's watching, but because they honor their purpose through performance. That's why they never burn out completely, because their fuel isn't external validation. It's internal meaning. They've made peace with the grind, not because it's easy, but because it's the path to becoming who they're meant to be. Practical ways to reignite motivation. When you feel that fire dimming, here's how to get it back. Revisit your vision board. See it. Feel it. Remember what you're building toward. Change your environment. A shift in scenery can shift your energy. Work somewhere new. Clear your desk. Reset your space. Move your body. Physical motion fuels emotional motion. A walk, a workout, or a stretch can reignite clarity. Read or listen to greatness. Inspiration is contagious. Consume content that reawakens your ambition. Reconnect with people who elevate you. Talk to those who see your potential, not your limitation. Remember your progress. Look back at how far you've come. Proof that you can keep going. Motivation doesn't have to be constant. It just has to be reignited, becoming a fire that never dies. When you stop chasing temporary sparks and start cultivating long-term purpose, something powerful happens. You stop being a candle in the wind and start becoming the fire itself. Your energy stops depending on external inspiration. It comes from within, from clarity, discipline, meaning, and identity. That's what makes the truly great unshakable. They don't wait to feel motivated. They've built systems, habits, and beliefs that keep them on fire. So when your spark fades, when the excitement dims and the grind feels heavy, don't panic. You're not broken. You're just being tested. The question isn't how do I stay motivated? It's how do I stay connected to my purpose? Because once you anchor yourself to that, you'll never lose your fire again. You'll wake up knowing that what you do matters. You'll move with quiet conviction instead of chasing noise. You'll become the kind of person who doesn't need motivation, because your mission burns from within. Chapter 8. Lead without losing yourself. Elevate others. Protect your energy. There comes a moment in every journey of self-improvement when your growth starts to echo beyond you. Your words begin to matter. Your habits start to inspire. Your consistency becomes a mirror for others to see what's possible. You stop being just a student of discipline. You become an example of it. But with that influence comes a new challenge. How do you lead others without draining your own energy? How do you elevate your environment without losing your edge? Because make no mistake, success attracts attention, and attention, if you're not careful, can dilute your focus. The most successful people in the world have mastered the art of leading without losing themselves. They give generously but guard fiercely. They inspire freely but protect their peace. They lift others, but never at the expense of their own alignment. But true leadership isn't about overextending. It's about radiating energy so powerfully that others rise just by being near you. It's not about control, it's about influence through example. That's why the strongest leaders aren't loud, they're grounded. They don't chase followers, they attract alignment. They lead through rhythm, not reaction. When you see a calm, confident leader who doesn't seem to rush or over-explain, that's not arrogance, that's emotional mastery. They've learned that to lead effectively, your state is more influential than your strategy. Every time you help someone, support someone, or say yes. You open the circle slightly, allowing warmth to reach others. But if you never close that circle again, your fire starts to fade. That's what happens to most people who lead without boundaries. They burn out from giving too much without refueling. Successful people have learned a sacred truth. You can't pour from an empty cup, but you can overflow from a full one. They don't isolate themselves, but they regulate them. They create quiet pockets of solitude, moments in the morning, breaks during the day, reflections at night, where they come back to center. They don't feel guilty for saying no. They know that every no to distraction is a yes to longevity. Leadership at its highest level is energy management, and energy once misused is hard to reclaim. Your consistency is your credibility. Your peace is your power. Successful people understand this intuitively. They don't try to convince people to change. They embody change. They wake up early. They stay focused when others complain. They deliver excellence without broadcasting effort. Over time, people begin to notice. They begin to ask, "How are you so calm under pressure? How do you stay so consistent?" And that's when influence begins. Quietly, powerfully, naturally. Because leadership isn't about telling people what to do. It's about showing them what's possible. That's why successful people are intentional about the spaces they occupy and the people they surround themselves with. They understand that growth is contagious, but so is stagnation. So they make a conscious decision to become the thermostat, not the thermometer. A thermometer reacts to its environment. A thermostat sets the environment. When you walk into a room full of negativity, complaints or excuses, you have two choices: absorb the energy or elevate it. Leaders elevate. They bring calm to chaos, focus to distraction, and vision to doubt. They don't argue with small minds. They inspire with big actions. They don't compete for attention. They create alignment through authenticity. That's what separates influencers from true leaders. Leaders don't need to be seen. They need to be effective. Helping others means empowering them. Losing yourself means enabling their dependence. Successful people lead by equipping others to stand tall, not by carrying them. They teach responsibility, not reliance. They share tools, not crutches. They've learned that if you save everyone, you drain yourself. But if you teach others to save themselves, you multiply your impact. That's sustainable leadership, where your energy becomes a force multiplier, not a casualty. The power of calm leadership. We live in a world that confuses volume with power. But true leadership is calm, not chaotic. The calm leader is not passive. They're anchored. They don't react impulsively. They respond intentionally. They don't shout to be heard. They listen to understand. They don't dominate others. They elevate them. That's the kind of leadership that sustains, because it's built on emotional intelligence, not ego. When people around you feel seen, supported, and safe, they naturally rise to their best selves. You don't have to force growth. You just have to create the space for it. And that's exactly what the world's most successful people do. They build environments where excellence becomes natural. The leadership habit: energy before ego. Every day successful people make one quiet decision: energy first, ego last. They don't need to be right. They need to be effective. They don't seek validation. They seek results. Their leadership is rooted in intention, not attention. That's why they can handle criticism with grace. They don't take things personally, because they're not leading for applause, they're leading for impact. They know the mission is bigger than their move. So when challenges arise, when people misunderstand them, when things don't go their way, they don't crumble. They refocus. They remember. Leadership is service, not status. And that clarity keeps them powerful yet peaceful. How to elevate without burning out. If you want to lead others while protecting your own energy, follow the pattern great leaders live by. Start grounded. Begin each day in silence, reflection, or gratitude before engaging the world. Choose presence. Give full attention to whoever or whatever is in front of you. No distractions. No split focus. Set boundaries. Protect your recharge time like a meeting with your future self. No guilt. Help others grow by giving them responsibility. Reflect daily. Ask yourself, did I lead with energy or ego today? Detach from outcome. Lead with intention, but don't depend on results for fulfillment. Leadership is not a sprint, it's a transfer of energy, and that energy must be renewed daily. When leadership becomes legacy, true success is never just about personal gain. At some point it becomes about multiplication. They ripple outward. They inspire your team, your family, your community. You become a catalyst, not through force but through embodiment. And that's the final evolution of growth. You start for yourself, you continue for your future, and you endure for others. That's legacy. The most fulfilled people in the world aren't just chasing their own goals. They're helping others discover theirs. They've turned their life into a lighthouse, not to be admired, but to guide. Because leadership at its highest form is service without depletion, strength without arrogance, and vision without vanity. They're seeing the silent power of example. Every day, someone is watching you. Someone younger, someone lost, someone who needs proof that it's possible. You may not even realize it, but your consistency could be giving someone else the courage to start. That's the quiet power of leadership. It multiplies in ways you'll never see. So keep showing up. Keep embodying what you believe. Keep protecting your energy so your light doesn't dim. Because your growth isn't just for you, it's for everyone your life will touch. They don't wait for leadership titles. They lead from wherever they are. They don't wait for perfect followers. They act from perfect intention. They are the thermostat, the anchor, the quiet example that sets the standard of excellence. That's what makes them unshakable. That's what makes them magnetic. That's what makes them unforgettable. Lead yourself first. That's how you'll have the strength to lead others. Elevate your environment. That's how you multiply your impact. Protect your energy. That's how you sustain your greatness. Because the moment you learn to lead without losing yourself, you stop chasing success, and you start becoming it. Chapter 9. Reflect, Reset, and Realign. The weekly ritual of growth. There's a moment, usually at the end of the week, when the noise starts to fade, the meetings slow down, the veils stop, the world quiets just enough for you to hear your own thoughts again. That moment, right there, is sacred. It's where successful people win or lose the next week, before it even begins. Because they understand that progress doesn't just come from doing more. It comes from pausing, from reflecting, resetting, and realigning with what truly matters. Every high performer, every disciplined achiever, every person who seems to move through life with direction and calm, has one thing in common. They do not rush blindly from one week to the next. They review the week that just passed, extract the lessons, and intentionally plan the one ahead. Reflection is not about judgment. It's about awareness. Take a moment right now and think, how often do you stop to really ask yourself, what worked this week? What didn't? Where did I drift? Where did I show strength? Most people don't do this. They just carry their mistakes, frustrations and distractions into the next week like emotional baggage. They never stop to reset the internal compass. But the most successful people, the ones who sustain growth year after year, make this pause non-negotiable. The power of weekly reflection. Reflection is a mirror. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It simply shows you what is. When you take time each week to review your actions, emotions and results, you gain something that's impossible to buy: clarity. Successful people block out time, even if it's just 30 minutes on a Sunday, to review their week. They look at their goals, habits and interactions. They don't just ask, did I succeed? They ask, did I act in alignment with who I want to be? They write down what drained them and what energized them. They take note of the habits that produced results and those that caused friction. This act alone turns every week into a lesson, a mini masterclass in personal growth. Because here's the truth: if you don't track what you're doing, you can't improve it. Reflection turns your week into data. Resetting turns that data into direction. Reset, the art of letting go. After reflection, comes the reset. This is where you mentally and emotionally let go of what didn't serve you, the small mistakes, the missed workouts, the moments you reacted instead of responded. Resetting is not about pretending the week was perfect. It's about forgiving yourself for what wasn't, and freeing up mental space to do better next time. The successful don't cling to guilt or frustration. They understand that emotional residue kills momentum. They have a system for clearing it. Maybe that's a walk in nature. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's a quiet hour away from all screens. Just breathing and thinking. The form doesn't matter. The principle does. Before the new week starts, they clear their mental and emotional inbox. When you carry emotional weight from last week into the next, it's like trying to run a race while dragging a suitcase. Reflection identifies the baggage. Resetting lets you drop it. Realign. The bridge to purpose. And then comes realignment. Perhaps the most powerful part of the process. Realignment means reconnecting your daily actions with your deeper purpose, because the longer you go without reflection, the easier it is to drift away from your why. Successful people know that small misalignments add up. One rushed decision, one day of skipping priority, 1 week of saying yes to everything. Before you know it, you're busy but not effective, productive but not fulfilled. Realignment pulls you back to center. It reminds you why you started. It forces you to look at your calendar and ask, does my schedule reflect my values? Does my time align with my goals? Every week, high performers make subtle adjustments, not huge overhauls. They tweak their routines, adjust their goals, and recommit to what matters most. This is how they stay consistent while others burn out. The 3 R's framework: reflect, reset, realign. Think of it as a weekly ritual, a framework you can rely on for life. Reflect. What did I learn this week? Where did I grow? Where did I drift? Reset. What do I need to release emotionally or mentally before I move forward? Realign. What are my top priorities for next week? And do they serve my long-term vision? Write it out. Speak it aloud. Think it through while walking. The key is consistency. When done weekly, this simple ritual compounds. You become more self-aware, more emotionally intelligent, more grounded. The science behind weekly reflection. Psychologists have shown that reflection boosts learning and performance. It enhances metacognition, your ability to think about your own thinking. This self-awareness helps you recognize patterns before they become problems. And emotionally, reflection activates the same parts of the brain used in mindfulness and meditation, lowering stress, improving clarity, and helping you respond instead of react. In other words, reflection keeps you balanced. High performers use it not only to analyze results, but also to regulate emotions. It's their weekly reset button. It's what allows them to stay sharp, focused, and energized even during chaotic seasons. The energy reset routine. Want to experience the same mental freshness successful people feel every Monday? Here's how to reset like they do. Step 1. End your week with gratitude. Write down 3 things that went right, no matter how small. Gratitude reprograms your focus toward growth. Step 2. Identify one habit or decision that didn't serve you. Don't overanalyze it. Just name it. Awareness is enough to weaken its hold. Step 3. Do one physical act that signals closure. Clean your workspace, organize your notes, or take a slow walk. Let your body process the end of a cycle. Step 4. Set 3 simple intentions for the coming week. Keep them action-based, not outcome-based. For example, I'll meditate for 10 minutes daily, or I'll respond instead of react. When Monday arrives, you'll feel lighter, not because life is easier, but because your mind is clearer. Avoiding the burnout trap. Many ambitious people fail not because they lack discipline, but because they never pause. They stay in constant execution mode, pushing harder each week without reflection. But progress without reflection is like running on a treadmill, exhausting, with little movement forward. The successful know how to rest actively. They schedule stillness as seriously. They build white space into their calendar, moments to breathe, think, and reset. That's not laziness, that's wisdom. Because burnout doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing too much without meaning. And meaning only comes through reflection and realignment, making it a ritual. Your reflection doesn't have to be long or complicated. You just have to do it consistently. Create a simple end-of-week ritual. Light a candle, grab a notebook, and answer 3 questions. What will I focus on next week to grow by 1%? That's it. Simple, grounded, transformative. Over time, this ritual rewires your brain. You start to move through life with rhythm, not chaos. You stop chasing motivation because you operate from clarity. You no longer wake up wondering what to do, because you already know. The compounding effect. Here's the secret most people miss. Weekly reflection compounds just like money. 1 week of clarity seems small, but 52 weeks of clarity in a year transforms your entire direction. You begin each week with sharper focus, deeper energy, and higher awareness. You start living intentionally instead of reactively. You start designing your weeks around your goals, not your distraction. And one day, you'll look back and realize, those 30 quiet minutes every week built the foundation for your success. Final thought. The difference between exhaustion and excellence is reflection. The gap between chaos and clarity is the ability to pause and realign. So as this week ends, take a breath, reflect on what you've learned, reset what no longer serves you, realign with what matters most. And when the new week begins, step into it lighter, clearer, and stronger. Because success isn't built in the noise of doing more. It's built in the silence of understanding yourself. That's how successful people grow, not in endless motion, but in meaningful reflection. Reflect, reset, realign. Do that every week and you won't just change your results, you'll change your life. Chapter 10. Build the life system. Living 1% better every day. There comes a point when growth stops being a goal and becomes a way of living. Where improvement isn't forced, it's automatic. Where discipline isn't something you have to think about, it's just who you are. That's what the 1% philosophy leads to, a life system that works for you, not against you. A structure so intentional, so balanced, that you can sustain progress, not for a month, not for a year, but for life. The truth is, success isn't built from random bursts of motivation. It's built from systems that make motivation irrelevant. The people who seem unstoppable aren't always more talented. They've just built lives that naturally produce momentum. The foundation. Identity over intensity. You can't build long-term growth on short-term identity. If your actions depend on how you feel today, you'll always be inconsistent. But when your habits are tied to who you believe you are, everything changes. Successful people don't say, "I'll try to wake up early." They say, "I'm the kind of person who values mornings." They don't say, "I'll try to eat healthy." They say, "I'm the kind of person who takes care of their energy." That subtle shift, from trying to doing, from doing to being, changes everything. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So build a system that supports your identity, and your success becomes inevitable. The system of daily excellence. Let's break down what a life system really looks like. It's not a rigid routine. It's a flexible rhythm that aligns your actions, emotions, and environment toward consistent growth. There are 5 pillars. Morning clarity. Start each day with intention. 10 minutes of quiet reflection. 1 page of gratitude. 1 decision that defines the day. Focused work blocks. Design your work around deep focus. No distractions, no noise. Just 1 clear task at a time. Energy management. Move your body. Hydrate. Eat clean. Protect your mental bandwidth as fiercely as your calendar. Evening reflection. End each day with review. Ask, what went well? What could be better? Capture the lessons while they're fresh. Weekly realignment. Step back every weekend. Reflect, reset, and realign. The same framework you mastered in Chapter 9. Each of these pillars feeds the next. Reflection strengthens focus. Focus deepens clarity. Clarity fuels consistency. And consistency compounds into transformation. The environment multiplier. Habits don't exist in isolation, they live in environments. You can't grow consistently in an environment that constantly distracts or drains you. That's why successful people engineer their surroundings to make good choices easier and bad ones harder. They remove friction. They set visual cues. They turn their values into visible reminders. Want to read more? Leave a book on your desk instead of your phone. Want to wake up early? Put your alarm across the room. Want to move more? Lay out your workout clothes the night before. You don't have to fight your environment. You have to design it. Your surroundings should reflect the life you want to live. Every object, every space, every digital notification should serve your purpose, not steal your attention. The most successful people build emotional resilience into their life systems. They don't expect motivation to be permanent. They prepare for days when energy dips, when doubt creeps in, when life gets heavy. How? By anchoring their habits to meaning. When they wake up early, it's not about beating the sunrise, it's about honoring their goals. When they meditate, it's not about silence, it's about self-control. When they rest, it's not laziness, it's recovery for the next battle. They redefine every action through purpose. That's what keeps them grounded through chaos. Because emotions are powerful but they're unreliable. Systems are reliable. And when your systems are powered by purpose, you become unstoppable. The power of compound progress. The 1% principle doesn't just apply to skills or habits. It applies to everything. 1% more focus. 1% more kindness. 1% more courage. Every small decision shapes your destiny. You won't feel it daily, but over months, you'll see the curve bend. 1 year from now, those tiny choices will separate you from who you were. 5 years from now, they'll define who you've become. Growth is never about speed, it's about direction. And when you live with direction, the world moves with you. It's journaling, not when you're lost but so you stay found. It's exercising, not when you're tired of your reflection, but when you respect your health. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency, because intensity builds excitement. Consistency builds empire. The world doesn't reward those who start fast. It rewards those who never stop. Are your actions producing progress or distraction? Each week, take one of these and improve it by 1%. Just one, that's all. Over time, those small audits stack up until your entire life runs on purpose, not pressure. Becoming the architect of your life. You are not just the product of your habits. You are the architect of them. Every decision you make builds a wall or opens a door. Every hour you live builds a foundation or weakens one. The difference between an average week and an extraordinary one isn't luck, it's intention. The people you admire aren't superhuman, they're just super consistent. They've decided that every day matters, every morning counts, every 1%. Your final shift. So here's the shift. Stop chasing success. Start building systems that create it. Stop hoping for better days. Start designing them. Stop wishing for motivation. Build momentum through small, consistent wins. When you live this way, success stops being something you achieve. It becomes something you embody. Because the 1% rule isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about waking up each day and saying, today, I'll show up a little better than yesterday. That mindset, that quiet, steady commitment is what transforms lives. Not because you changed overnight, but because you never stopped changing. This is how successful people live, not waiting for perfect moments, not relying on motivation, but showing up day after day, 1% stronger, 1% wiser. The closing message. So as you close this audiobook, remember, you already have everything you need to grow. You don't need permission. You don't need the right timing. You just need one small, deliberate action. Today, then take one step. One small, intentional, 1% step. Because when you commit to being just a little better every day, one day, you'll look back and realize you built a masterpiece. This is your time to rise, to rewrite your story. One habit, one decision, one unstoppable day at a time. I'm proud of you for showing up. If this audiobook moved you, inspired you, or gave you clarity, don't let it end here. Subscribe to ReadFlow Audiobook and keep your growth on autopilot. We're building something powerful here. a movement of focused minds and disciplined hearts. Together we rise, together we build. This is ReadFlow Audiobook, and your journey has only just begun.